The most successful leaders I've coached didn't make massive changes. They mastered these tiny daily habits instead. In this video, I'm going to share with you 10 tiny habits that if you implement can have an enormous impact for you as a leader. And when I say tiny, I mean tiny. Actions that take anything from a couple of seconds to 5 minutes. But if you develop them into consistent habits, will have a huge effect on your ability to manage and lead your team and achieve your goals. However busy you are, these habits really will help you stand out as a leader. When I work with clients, one of the first things I get them to do is reflect on the leader they want to be. And we discuss their values and they create a leadership vision, bringing to life those ideas of the impact they want to have, how they'll help their team succeed, and the type of culture that they would like to create around them. And what people tell me is often truly inspirational. I always think, wow, if all these visions were to come to life, what amazing results there would be, not just for them, but for their teams and their organizations, and how many more amazing workplaces there would be. When we then come to working on those plans to achieve that vision, into sight comes one very big barrier. In every workshop and every coaching session I've ever run, the number one reason for not changing the way someone does something is time. No one's got enough of it. But often when we dig deeper, it's more complex. Nerves and a lack of confidence often stop people trying new things. Habits formed over many years often have served us individually well, but they are less effective when you are leading other people. Getting out of our comfort zone is scary. So when time is short, people often stay exactly where they are. Not only is their leadership potential stalled, but all that potential in their team is too. And this is where the power of tiny habits comes in. It was developed by Dr. B.J. Fogg, a behavioral scientist at Stanford University, in his book, Tiny Habits. Tiny habits are an approach to transformative behavioral change that emphasizes the effectiveness of starting really small. And this method focuses on creating manageable and easily doable habits that can lead to significant long-term changes. The key principles are, first, make it tiny. So the core idea is start with actions that are so small they seem almost trivial. This reduces our resistance and mental pushback, making it easier to begin the habit. So for example, instead of saying I'm going to commit to a whole new fitness regime, you might start by saying I'm going to start by walking for 20 minutes 2 times a week. Secondly, you need to anchor the habit, by which I mean new habits should be linked to an existing moment or routine or event in your daily life. This anchoring technique ensures the new behavior becomes a natural extension of something you're already doing. Thinking of that moment that leads to the behavior you want to change and thinking, what could I do differently, helps you spot these change moments that you focus on. And thirdly, you celebrate success. Each time you successfully perform that tiny habit, you give yourself that little acknowledgement that you've done it. And that reinforces the positive feelings associated with that behavior. Now, this could be as simple as saying, yay, well done me, to yourself. When I coach people, they normally take note of when and how often they have done it. Plus, we then discuss it and celebrate their progress when we talk. This celebration helps create positive emotions around that habit, increasing the likelihood of it sticking. The benefits over time are that tiny habit changes build momentum. As these tiny habits become ingrained, they can serve as building blocks for more significant changes and increase your belief that you can succeed. So what are the 10 tiny habits I think would most help you accelerate your leadership skills and your impact? Do you know less than 30% of people worldwide are engaged in their work, according to Gallup? That's a lot of people feeling like they're doing meaningless work, all that lost potential. And when we look at why this might be, amongst 2 of the main reasons that particularly stand out for me is firstly a lack of purpose, meaning employees often disengage when they don't feel connected to the organisation's vision. And secondly, poor leadership and management, including poor communication of expectations and minimal constructive feedback. The first tiny habit focuses on this issue so that when you're delegating work or explaining goals and objectives to your team, always explain why they need to do what you're asking them to do. Explaining this gives them context and meaning and helps your team members join the dots so that they really understand their role and the team's role in helping the organisation achieve its goals. As I mentioned, time is one of the biggest challenges for leaders, and this is especially true when it comes to time for thinking and planning, and I have found that most do it wrong. There are 3 windows of time that are important for managers to plan in. I call them the Goldilocks and the 3 bears of planning. Now there is the annual plan. Many managers do this as it's normally part of the business process and it drives the goals and objectives for the next year. The problem with annual planning is that it's just too big. As the year progresses, things change, and those clear goals at the start of the year can get blurry, so they need to be adjusted and refocused. Then there are weekly or daily planning. This drives the specific activities you're actually working on right then. The problem with weekly planning is it's just too small. This planning is done when you are right in the action. It is difficult to stand back and see the bigger picture. The just right window of time for managers and leaders is the quarter, when you can take big goals and turn them into tangible, doable plans that accommodate any changes. It's a time to prioritise, check not just on the work that you're doing, but also the people in your team to ensure that you have the right resources in place to deliver the plan and you can make decisions and choices accordingly. Yet, I find most managers don't do this incredibly valuable task. The result is that many are in the reactive, urgent, and important mode most of the time, with minimal, if any, time given over to the important, non-urgent thinking and tasks when you have time on your side to make decisions about how you might do something. The tiny habit that makes a difference here is to schedule the sessions. It's so easy as it happens on exactly the same time every quarter. I schedule 2 hours on a Friday of the 3rd week in March, June, September. December's usually a little different because we've got Christmas and the new annual plan, so it's a bit more dynamic. But then I set time just before the Christmas break and in the first week back to get really focused. This simple diary management habit has been such a productivity driver for me. It means that I see it in my diary as it's coming up, I start thinking about it, and when the time comes, I am super focused on planning the next quarter, and I enter that quarter with a clear set of priorities and feeling so much more in control. So tiny habit 2 is schedule this time in your diary. Tiny habit 3 is about improving the impact that you have in each and every meeting you attend. How many meetings fill your diary and you sit there thinking this is an absolute waste of time? The best leaders are intentional in their meetings and they bias to action and are respectful of everyone's time. Your meetings will stand out if you start every meeting with the words, "The purpose of this meeting is," and explain the reason that you're there, followed with, "By the end we will have," and explain the outcomes. It helps everyone know why they are there. By the end, you'll know if you've achieved your meeting goals, and it also makes it so much easier to park off-topic topics and conversations that do not contribute to the reason that you are there. The next habit is also for meetings, especially if you are the most senior person in the room. Talk last. This is an approach Jeff Bezos practices as a strategic leadership approach to encourage open and honest communication. Bezos believes that when the most senior person speaks first, it can significantly influence and potentially suppress other team members' opinions. Now, there is a psychological insight to back this up, as even the most highly intelligent and strong-willed person might second-guess their original thoughts if the leader speaks first. But there is a broader leadership skill here, and it emphasizes the importance of just listening. Being a good listener is crucial for understanding different perspectives, fostering team engagement, and promoting a culture of open communication. So, for this one, speak last. Tiny habit 5 is to ask for feedback from team members. Asking for feedback and being seen to be comfortable with it will help create a feedback culture in your team. Role modeling that you ask for and act on feedback will create trust. Here are 3 really easy questions that you could use to get quality replies when asking for feedback from your team. First, What's one thing I could do differently that would make your job easier? Secondly, how could our team meetings be more effective for you? 3, what support do you need from me? What are you not currently getting? And here's another tiny feedback habit. When it comes to giving feedback, use the 48-hour rule. That is, if you see something that you want to give feedback on, don't delay. People forget about a situation so quickly, so you want to share the feedback when you both have the best chance of having a similar recollection of events, and it will make the feedback so much more meaningful. The 48-hour rule helps you nip bad stuff in the bud, and it makes the positive feedback much more memorable and relevant. Tiny habit 7 is all about one-to-ones. I think one-to-ones are like the heartbeat of leading a team. These short, regular meetings are all about clarity of direction, checking that you and your team members are on the same page, and vital moments to build trust. It is important to remember that it's your team members' one-to-one, not yours, and thus their needs are the most important. Your job is to be a guide, an unblocker, a supporter, and a coach. And yet I find they are often cancelled and deprioritised. Each time you do this, you are saying to your team, you're not important enough. So the habit that makes all the difference is another diary management task, scheduling them to make it a routine and always prioritising them. I've had clients who've picked one-to-one days, or they've picked time in their diary when they are least likely to be postponed. But just like quarterly planning, once it's in the diary and not an ad hoc meeting, it tends to be more likely to happen. Tiny habit 8 is about avoiding a very easy trap that many managers fall into. Whenever your team brings you a problem or an issue, as a manager, there is a risk that you jump in and answer by telling the person what to do. It's so easy just to go onto autopilot and tell them the answer. But in doing so, what you may often find is that you're landing, firstly, more work onto your plate, and that the team increasingly don't come up with solutions because they know you do that. They just share the problem with you. Instead, get into the habit of asking, what do they think you should do about it? This is such a powerful question as it switches off your autopilot, it empowers the person to solve the problem for themselves, and importantly, when the problem is complex and you might not know the answer, it gives you time to think. This is a tip I adopted when I was in corporate life, and I was constantly amazed at the brilliant solutions people would come up with on their own. And I would say, yeah, brilliant, crack on. It's such a time and stress saver, but also an important empowerment builder. Back in my corporate days, my team worked on the top floor of our office block. Marketing worked on the floor below in exactly the same location. It took about 2 minutes to walk from my desk down the stairs to the desk of my opposite number, the marketing director. One day, I was talking with one of my team members about quite a complex issue. And from my perspective, we seemed to be dancing around the problem and not really wrestling it to the ground. I asked about what this particular marketing person he was dealing with had said about it. And my team member said he would just forward the email. He did. And as I read the whole email chain, this email had been going over several days, like a game of never-ending email tennis. Email is a terrible communication tool for anything that is complex, or if there are different points of view. As our fingers tap away on the computer keys, we seem to forget that we could just walk a little distance or pick up the phone and have a good old chat. So tiny habit number 9 is, if you exchange emails 2 times on an issue, ask yourself the question, will this be resolved quicker with a conversation? 9 out of 10 times it will be. And so be the one to pick up the phone or walk over to the desk and ask if you can just have a chat and talk it through and resolve it. You will be seen as a proactive problem solver and save so much time if you can help cut through problems fast. Plus, you'll build much stronger relationships with your colleagues. Tiny habit 10 is, at the end of each week, spend a little time celebrating your team's accomplishments, no matter how small. When we're busy, it's so easy to forget to thank people for their hard work and celebrate all the little successes along the week. It might get lost in a good job comment, but the art is to be specific. The power of using a little regular time to acknowledge your team's hard work and all the things that have gone well can be a fantastic driver for developing your team culture. It's so simple and it takes no longer than 5 minutes. Send an email, walk around and tell people so that they all go into the weekend feeling that positive buzz of acknowledgement. I promise you'll feel good too. So there you go, 10 tiny habits that take from a couple of seconds to 5 minutes. I recommend you try 1 or 2 out this week. Just spot that moment when you could try it, to anchor it, and then acknowledge and celebrate each time you do it. These all over time can have an enormous impact on your leadership skills. But you may still be a little worried about where you're going to find the time. This is where these time management strategies for managers can come in and help you properly apply it. So watch this video to truly understand how you can find the time to keep working on your tiny habits.